The ACC Football Championship game is set, and boy, did we have a bumpy road getting here. Let's bring in the squad.
You're talking ball with the ACC Squad, sponsored by Game Time. From Florida State to North Carolina, from Syracuse to Miami, and from NC State to California, it's the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive preview of the upcoming ACC weekend. Hang on, it could get loud, it could get heated, and it will definitely be fun. Squad up, you're part of the ACC Squad.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making the squad your first listen and your first watch today. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. I was hoping Jackson Holzer from Locked On Syracuse would take today off, but I don't have that kind of luck. We got Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone from Locked On Wolfpack. We got JJ Jackson from Locked On Blue Devils, Isaac Shade from Locked On Tar Heels, and this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel because new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We had a bunch of brawls over the weekend in college football. Rivalry weekend got very heated. And, yeah, friends, we have an ACC Championship game set for this Saturday in Charlotte. It's going to be the SMU Mustangs. We already knew that. Taking on the Clemson Tigers. Now, Clemson gets in because my Miami Hurricanes, they couldn't do that one thing, and that was protect a 21-point lead against Jackson's Syracuse Orange. So, Jackson, congratulations on the upset, sir.
Thank you. I did not play, but I will certainly take the congratulations. What a game. That was fun. Whoever won that game, it was a fun game.
Donno, is that the word you would use to describe it? Was it fun?
Oh, it was definitely fun. It was amazing. It was See, we got to stick it to Miami. That was the best part. We got to basically ruin their season. Ooh.
Maybe they still have a shot.
Maybe. But guess what? We can talk about all the playoff scenarios in the world, but if Clemson wins, it's over for your Miami Hurricanes. I was listening to some of the Hurricanes podcast. I was listening to Locked On Sports Miami, the IDGAF Bowl. Ooh, man. All you had to do was protect a 21-point lead. That's all you had to do to Syracuse. See, nobody knew Syracuse football until Saturday. Nobody. We did. ACC Squad knowers did. ACC teams knew. But national media, no clue. They see Syracuse on the schedule. It's like they ignore the record. They ignore that Kyle McCord's one of the best passers in the country. And they just look at the brand and they say, well, Syracuse football, they're just not very good. They just can't be good, right? How can they beat Miami? Even myself didn't pick Syracuse to win. I did think they were going to keep it close and competitive, but a lot of people were just like, this is going to be a write-off. Miami's going to win. Why play the games? I think we can eliminate the hypothetical now, right? Can we eliminate that? Yeah. Hypothetically speaking. Instead, let's just play on the field. Let's look at the results. And guess what? I think the better team won on Saturday.
Oh,
I think that's right. The better team.
Oh, boy.
You had a 21-point lead. A 21-point lead. Hear me out. A 21-point lead. And you lost? And the 21-point lead was early in the game. It was early.
Yeah. You're all cocky because your coach got to shower again finally.
He got to shower for 3 straight games.
Syracuse, obviously Syracuse was the better football team that day. Obviously, Syracuse was better that day, or Miami wouldn't have lost that game. Now, unfortunately for me, better that day. Miami has an unserious defense. And
that's true.
Taking nothing away. Kyle McCord did what he did all season long. 380 passing yards was even above his average, I think, against
that's
Miami.
Not even a lot for him, honestly. That's like 280.
But I'll tell you, Miami's defensive breakdowns, unfortunately, did not surprise me. Honestly, the one thing that did surprise me was the fumble taken back the other way. Because if you told me Xavier Restrepo would be the guy to cough up the football in what turned out to be really the turning point and game-changing play of that game, that's not what I expected. You're going to give me anybody else in that receiving core who would cough up the football for a return the other way. Restrepo was the last guy I would have imagined. And unfortunately for Miami, when your defense is that unserious, the margin for error for your offense is virtually zero. It's virtually zero. And Cam Ward played great. Like, it wasn't his fault. He didn't fumble. He didn't throw any interceptions. He actually had, if you go by the Pro Football Focus ratings, he actually had his best game of the season against Syracuse. But when your defense lets you down and when you just make too many mistakes, which again has been Miami's MO, even in games that they've won this year, things like that can happen. And it's why I wasn't shocked. Listen, protecting a 21-point lead is one thing. Even when Miami was up 21 points heading into the second quarter, I'm like, stop the count. It's too early in the game. Maybe they could hold a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter, not in the second quarter.
They got up too early.
I'm going to tell you something. Jackson, the last time somebody got to preaching like that in New York, someone yelled, "Get your hand out my pocket," and Malcolm X's funeral preceded that shortly after. That
was the best part, Kenton. I'm not in New York right now. I'm not in New York. I'm in South Florida.
He's in my garage right now.
Jackson, oh my God, Jackson is in your trap right now. Jackson is in. This is like finding out that Kendrick Lamar recorded "Squabble Up" in Toronto. What is this? What is this? You know what? I'm gonna say this, and I mean this from the most genuine place possible. I don't believe that every loss should be a requiem of a coach's hire or whether or not his job should be on the line. This should absolutely be a requiem for Miami and Cristobal. I don't care what anyone says. It's not just about what the expectations were coming into the season. It's the way in which you lost this game. Don't get me wrong. I love the Mob. I think higher of Syracuse's defense than most people do. Anybody who knows me knows if Marlowe Wax has no fans on this earth, I am gone. With that in mind, you can't run the ball to melt the clock away against a defensive line that is exponentially smaller than you up front. Your two backs, I talk about it all the time, 450 pounds of man meat coming downhill. And you're telling me you can stop it, Isaac. Stop it. You're supposed to be a preacher. Don't be like that. But you get what I'm saying here. Like, those are two massive running backs coming downhill. And for whatever reason, you don't think to yourself, hey, Cam's been fine, but we should probably run the ball a little bit to put this thing away. I look at this and I say, defensive adjustments. I get it. You're an offensive guy. At what point do you say my offense needs a break? At what point do you look at your D coordinator and say, hey, buddy, what you've been doing so far is not working. They have figured it out. They've hit the lethal shooter. I understand it now. You've got to do something different. It's just a moment for me where I look at Cristobal and I say, this one falls squarely at your feet, because to blow a 21-point lead with your first ACC championship appearance in nearly a decade on the line, with your first opportunity to write your own ticket to a playoff in right in your grasp, and this is what you do with it, I absolutely think there should be a conversation about Miami as much as there is praise to Syracuse.
Well, I think those conversations are happening, and I still believe in Cristobal as a program builder. But obviously, there's probably going to need to be, as he's done every year since he's been at Miami, there's probably going to need to be some more tweaks on the staff, because somebody's got to be held accountable for it, and it's his job as the CEO of that football program to make the changes and the fixes necessary. And obviously, not every coaching hire he's made is a good one. I think he did a good job with Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator. Obviously, I give Cristobal credit for going out there and recruiting Cam Ward the way that he did. But yeah, I mean, you can't trot into 2025 with the same kind of defense you played in 2024.
What do you think? First off, Donno, congrats to you. I'm so proud of you for just sitting there and taking all that like a boss. Way to go.
I mean, what am I supposed to do? I lost. There's nothing I can do.
As we learned this weekend, some people cannot take a loss and move on. But
very true.
That's what I'm saying. What do you think Clemson fans experienced on Saturday, going from just like crap in the bed against South Carolina down the stretch and like, well, it's over, and then this, and it's like, oh, we just backed our way into this thing. All right, let's see what we got.
I think if Clemson wins the ACC and then maybe they go on a magical run in the playoff and they win the playoff and everything like that, they're the national champions. I think that Syracuse should be on the parade with them. That's my opinion.
Syracuse did as much for that as Clemson did.
Whatever the parade is for Clemson.
As much credit that I just gave you for talking your talk. As much credit I just gave you. Now you want to be the side chick on the parade. We wear orange too. We're the reason they were there.
No. I'm just saying because Clemson would have no chance at the playoff if not for Syracuse. But
is that it? Is that the point? Okay.
Let me let you in on the secret. Okay, I look at this situation for Clemson fans. And if you ask me what they experienced, I'll say it's jubilation. Based on what you saw in game one, there was not a snowball's chance in hell that you were getting to the playoff unless you ran the table and dominated. Based on what we saw against Louisville, it was over. That was it. That was all there was to it. And now here we are in a situation, like y'all said, they backdoored their way in by not doing anything. They didn't have to play good football to backdoor their way in down the stretch. They didn't have to win a game down the stretch against anybody but the Citadel, which they didn't even have to win that game, being my point here. The reality is they did their work early, made their hay early, and they needed Miami to do Miami things, which Miami this thing up. Okay, we're going to say about Miami again this year, just like we have every year in the past. So talented. Nobody's got a more talented roster. The talent is obvious. And yet and still, everybody on this panel has as many ACC championships as Miami in the 2020s. Like has as many ACC championships as Miami since when? What it ever? Do they have an ACC?
I'm going to mute all of you in 5 seconds.
I'm just saying, Donno, I love you, but we got to be honest. We were honest about the Wolfpack when CJ Bailey couldn't.
Bye.
Yes.
Tony Reale has shown up. Tony Reale here.
The big Miami lobby is trying to stop me, but I won't let them, okay? The reality is you've got to have some very serious conversations with yourself because, again, I don't think that Cristobal is a bad coach. I don't think that, hey, he's never the guy to get it done. But I will say, if this roster wasn't the one to get it done with, I'm not saying that this roster was without holes, but if this roster wasn't one in this year, where if you tell me coming into the season, Florida State's going to win 2 games. Oh, and Clemson, they're going to get the floor wiped with them multiple times, 3 to be exact. There's no way that you're telling me Miami doesn't do it with this roster. And lo and behold, they didn't do it with this roster.
By the way, that Kenton Gibbs mute was brought to you by Life Wallet.
I'll tell you, not to zoom this out too much, but I will. Something that does frustrate me is somebody who went to Miami, loves Miami, covers Miami is, I mean, every single year players leave early for the NFL draft who don't even get drafted. It's like, you know what? Maybe if a couple of your defensive backs had stayed around, James Williams, although they're doing well in the NFL, Cam Kinchins is obviously doing very well, but if Miami could actually keep guys around a little bit longer, oh man, maybe they could actually close. But Miami is, I'm taking my lumps here today. They're not the biggest disappointment in the ACC this year. Let's not forget about 2-10 Florida State.
Oh my goodness. I will say this about Miami. At least they're relevant enough that we actually talk about them.
Yeah.
At least they're relevant enough that we talk about them. They still could get into the college football playoff in theory.
Brian Smith is still lost.
Ducking the smoke. He's ducking the smoke. He said, I don't want no problems.
Protection, Brian Smith. He's got hair now. He's living in Albuquerque. I don't know where this dude has been. But when we come back, he'll have another
podcast going tomorrow about how Florida State lost another commit. Another one's gone. Where's he going next?
Oh, man. Well, I want to get into the matchup, SMU and Clemson, because I noticed the hypothetical before the matchup was finalized. Clemson would have been favored against SMU, but SMU is a 2.5-point favorite now. We'll get into that and so much more. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We got the squad assembled on Locked On ACC. We still have a lot of football left, folks. We got the conference championship games coming up. There's a whole lot of NFL action still to come. College football playoff is still in front of us. Get ready to tackle all the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get that hunch, we all get those in the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making the Locked On ACC Squad your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you check out all of our shows. I host Locked On Canes. Jackson hosts Locked On Syracuse. Kenton and Grayson on Locked On Wolfpack. JJ Jackson, Locked On Blue Devils. Isaac Shade, Locked On Tar Heels, and Locked On College Basketball as well, which is I wish I could pivot to basketball, but Miami's not good at that at all right now. The football team is a lot better
we got that in common.
Yes, we do.
Donno, Miami is one of the 5 worst teams in the power conference structure in the net right now in basketball. Carry on.
You're cruising for a mute of your own, Isaac Shade.
Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just stating the fact, Donno. That's it.
So how we feeling, fellas, about Clemson, of course, the traditional ACC power. SMU, one of the best stories in college football that not enough people are talking about. They came in and they crashed the party. They went a perfect 8-0 in conference play, and now they find themselves as 2.5-point favorites against Clemson. SMU's been the more consistent football team all season long. Clemson can absolutely win this game, but I look at SMU and their weapons, the way Kevin Jennings has played, Rashard Smith, who was named co-running back first team All-ACC this season. I think the Mustangs might just get it done year one.
Well, they're one of the teams that have proven they can turn the football over 6 times and still win a football game. That one still hurts. But I will say to Kenton and Isaac and Grayson, everyone in here, best in state. You guys can say it with me here. Best in state. How about the Duke Blue Devils in their 9-3 season?
I didn't see that coming.
Even despite losing that SMU game.
Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. We will see how long Duke can hold being good at football. You've had your 2 years in the sun. But seriously, we've got to give you your love there, and we've got to give love to SMU here because this team has done something that none of our teams could do. Any one of us on this panel, including Miami, could do. They were just consistent. They found ways in different ways every single time in conference. And anybody who wants to make the argument of, their schedule was just so much easier than everybody else's. In what world is that actually true? In what world are we looking at that team and saying, hey, they didn't have to play anybody along the way? Because who didn't they play? Who did they avoid in terms of all of the best teams in the conference? Yes, they didn't have a matchup with Miami. Yes, they didn't have a matchup with Clemson. That is the side effect of these super conferences. I love me some Pony Express. I love to see these guys getting their love. And by the way, this is a bigger point than what we're talking about right now. But how many times have I told people all of this delineation between conferences that we create, it's fictional. It's a fugazi, it's a fugazi, it's a weasel, it's a wazoo. It's not real. Because this SMU team comes in first year and gets it done. A Texas team that ain't pissed a drop in the Big 12 goes to the SEC, and all of a sudden they're the squad. This should show us, hey, college football is much closer in terms of where these teams are than we imagine. And SMU has shown through some very good pickups in the portal in the trenches, you can become that consistent team that doesn't, instead of teams that pay on the outside and try to worry about the inside last. I'm looking at you, Coach Doran. You need to address the bigs first.
I tell you what, I'm really happy for SMU, and I mentioned them probably like week 5 when I saw this as a possibility. I don't know how much I believe that they would actually make it this far, but here they are. They've deserved it every step of the way. I say all that to say I'm kind of surprised they're favored in this game. If it were me, I think I'd probably flip it with Clemson being a 2.5-point favorite. I think Clemson's defense is going to show up and be very for real, but I would love for this game to roll into a shootout. If SMU wins the conference in year 1.
Well, by the way, Clemson's not winning a shootout. SMU might. Clemson's not winning a shootout, in my opinion.
True. I don't know. We'll see. Clemson's just very random at this point. I don't know what to actually expect of them, but I just want a good game nonetheless.
And that's why SMU should be favored, because you have no idea what to expect from Clemson.
Touche.
That's the point. The model, or it's the word of the day, is consistency. That Absolutely. Is SMU's entire season. Because I remember around week 5, I was also looking at SMU, and I also was looking at SMU like, well, at some point they're going to lose.
Right.
They got to lose at some point. Like, someone's got to lose. And I was like, well, it's probably going to be SMU. I mean, are they really this good? And they just keep they just kept winning, and they just kept winning, and they just keep finding different ways to win. They're winning with a different quarterback than what they had at the start of the season. So I believe that SMU does deserve to be favored, and I do think that SMU is going to win this game.
And consistency is great, but the problem is this is not a series. This is a one-off opportunity. So if Clemson has one of those big days, it could be a thing, right? And so that's just the weirdness of a one-off. And like what I've been trying to process, fellas, is what happens if SMU loses this game? Do they go from a projected bye to being out of the field? Like, is that a real possibility? Like, what is the best thing for the ACC?
Yes, there is a possibility, but it's really only.
I don't think it happens.
What happens? It's only what happens with Boise State. Nobody's talking about this, but if Boise State loses and SMU loses, someone is really going to get royally hosed. It's going to be one of Indiana, Boise State, or SMU. If you just look at the numbers, I did the math last night.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. You know how in college basketball during like conference championship week, we start talking about bid thieves, like the teams that are going to get in definitely, but then you get like a random team winning a conference championship and then an at-large making it in. This is the first time we've had that scenario in college football. We might have some bid thief situations in this new playoff system.
The bid thieves in this case would be UNLV over Boise State. That would be a huge one, but you would have to give them the auto bid. And the other one would be obviously in our conference if Clemson beats SMU. If those two things happen, there's 3 teams for 2 spots left. And those 3 teams would be Boise State, SMU, and Indiana. Indiana can get royally hosed at 11-1. It's just, but that's what happens if those upsets happen.
Donno, what are your thoughts about Miami's chances of getting in this thing?
Honestly, I look at it as I could make the argument that they're 10-2, which combined losses of 9 total points against a Georgia Tech team that took Georgia to 8 overtimes and a good Syracuse.
You gotta go for 2. Why didn't they go for 2? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I think Miami probably has a resume that should get them in, and I will be disappointed if they don't. However, I go back to the crossover conversation that Jackson and I had, what we talked about last week on the squad. If Miami doesn't make it in, even if I feel like they should be deserving of getting in, because I put their 2-loss resume against 3-loss SEC teams like Alabama, who got blown out by Oklahoma. That's a bad loss. Vanderbilt's not a good loss. At the same time, Miami had so many opportunities to control their own destiny, and they blew it. So I could be at peace with whatever the committee decides, but it wouldn't stop me with being disappointed if they don't get in.
Don't leave it up to the committee.
But did we not see a situation where this was objectively the worst possible weekend for the ACC in multiple ways? Not only does Clemson lose, which then if Clemson wins that game, it helps the ACC in terms of like, hey, you've got a chance to get in multiple teams. But now
and it hurts South Carolina as well in that scenario.
And it hurts South Carolina. It eliminates them. And if SMU loses, you're like, well, you just lost to a team that beat a bubble team out of the SEC. Now it's like, well, hell, you lost to a 3-loss team, and this is what you are. Like, how do we possibly reconcile letting you in? And then Miami is behind both of those teams. It's like, well, you dims the brakes, I guess. Really, really tough week for the ACC's 3-team bid hopes. But I will say this. Again, in a logical and sane world, we are not debating about 2. To me, there's not a world where we're having a serious conversation about, is there at least 2 teams worthy? Because, again, every single team going into the playoff this year has shown some serious, and when I say serious, I mean serious flaws, including the number 1 team in America who made the Idaho Vandals look like they were a really good team. Like, everybody has had their moments where it's like, Are they for real? What's happening right now? So
there is not a dominant team in college football this year.
Yeah.
Well, and I was telling you guys this stat before we got started. Some of you barely even believed it. For as much as I have complained about Miami's defense, somehow they have the 24th rated total defense in America. I think that says a lot about college football right now.
There's just no defense. Period.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we had ACC first team, second team, third teamers announced. I want to talk about the first team when we come back. Are there any snubs? Did they get it right? You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this ACC squad. Thanks for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. Did JJ just disappear?
He's gone.
He said
he had to bounce during the timeout. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. So we got, I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes, Jackson Holzer, Locked On Syracuse, Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone, Locked On Wolfpack, Isaac Shade from Locked On Tar Heels. All right, so guys, first team All ACC announced. Not surprising, Cam Ward takes the first team quarterback honors. He eclipsed 4,000 yards this season, 36 touchdown passes. Very well-deserved. Amari and Hampton. I know Isaac can take his victory lap. What a season. What a running back. He and Brashard Smith from SMU. Amari and Hampton, UNC. Brashard Smith from SMU. Running backs, first team All-ACC. Wide receivers are Xavier Restrepo from Miami, Ja'Cory Brooks from Louisville, Antonio Williams from Clemson. Tight end,
hold on.
Yeah.
Before you go any further, all those Clemson fans who told me I didn't know ball and Brown was the best receiver on that team, can you tell me which receiver was All ACC first team again? Run that back by me one more time.
All right. So Clemson representative Antonio Williams.
Oh, the guy that Ken said was the playmaker. The one that Ken said was the okay, proceed. I'm sorry. My bad. Just Clemson fans think I hate him and I don't know no ball. Go ahead. Proceed.
You're good. All-purpose Desmond Reed from Pitt. He had a tremendous year. I know Pitt faded down the stretch, but what a start to the season. Sorry, Kenton. Offensive tackles, Blake Miller from Clemson, Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College. Guards, Willie Lampkin from UNC, Kalen Rutledge from Georgia Tech. Center, Drew Kendall from Boston College. So that's the offense, guys. Any omissions you saw there? That's pretty much how I expected to come out.
The one thing that was weird to me, Donno, was that I did some mathing and nobody was a unanimous first team all selection. Both Cam Ward and Omarion Hampton were the two highest point getters. Yeah. And even they were a couple there were 71 total voters, 3 points for a first team vote, which is like 213. Neither of them even got to that threshold. I thought that was kind of odd that we had no unanimous selections.
Yeah. That is a little bit odd. I would have thought that the two of those would probably be unanimous. On defense, defensive ends, Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College, APR Antoine Powell-Ryland from Virginia Tech, Aeneas Peebles of Virginia Tech, Simeon Barrow of Miami, the defensive tackles, also Jared Harrison Hunt from SMU, linebackers, Kyle Lewis of Pitt, Barrett Carter from Clemson, Teddy Buchanan from Cal, cornerbacks, Noah Williams from Cal, Chandler Rivers from Duke, safeties, Jonas Sanker and Isaiah Nwokobia from SMU. That's on the defensive side, fellas. Your thoughts?
You know, I don't think that there can be too much argument about most of these guys. Like even the guys where you would want to say, oh, my guy has a case. You've got to be very, very honest with yourself, right? As much as I love Davin Van, there's not a world where you could say he out-impacted 16 sacks apiece from Donovan Ezeraku and APR. Like those two were absolute freaks of nature this year off the edge. And I'll tell you what, when you look at the situation of guys having multiple 4-sack games, you could love to say, oh, Desmond Hurricane Bain, when he was healthy, he was the guy. You can't make a serious argument against either one of those.
He didn't have a great year. He was injured for half the year. Yeah, no.
Exactly. So you can't make an argument against either one of those bookends. I look at this defensive line at least, and I say they nailed this thing absolutely right, because if Aeneas Peoples didn't play as well as he did, Virginia Tech would have had a much worse season. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Hey, that season would have gone a lot worse for them if he didn't show up in a major way.
All right, so shout out to Florida State because they have a first-team specialist. This guy was probably the most used punter in the country. It's Alex Mastromano. Florida State punter is named first-team All-ACC. Miami gets their place kicker in, Andy Borregales. I thought that was interesting. I mean, Borregales had a fantastic year. Why I think it's interesting is I thought he got snubbed for the Groza. They named 3 finalists for the Groza. One of those is Fitzgerald, the Florida State kicker. who, to me, it's like a kicker doesn't face a single clutch situation the entire year because your team is 2-10 and he only kicked 12 field goal or only 12 extra points, I should say. I thought Borogalis got snubbed for the Groza, so I was happy to see that he made first team all ACC. And specialists, there was some competition there with some good returners, but it goes to Desmond Reed from Pitt, who had a phenomenal year.
Yeah, again, I think Desmond Reed, fantastic all-around player, fantastic all year in all the roles that he was given. And he's another guy. If he does not play as well as he does, as much as we talked about Pitt being clutch in all those situations, how many times did he create a short field for Pitt to score with based on his phenomenal return? So, I mean, again, I think all of these make sense. And Mastromano, ice up, son. Get your legs some rest, man. Boy, I tell you, that we have not seen the guy have to.
He was the best player in Florida State this season.
Listen,
I know they don't win 2 games without him.
Norvell got tired of saying game ball, Mastromano. Another game ball, Mastromano. Hey guys, guess who the player of the week is this week? It's DJ Alex Mastromano. That's
you
who
give
it
out
is.
good balls for going.
I cannot believe that DJU was the quarterback at one point for Florida State. That's how weird this season has been.
Yeah.
Feels like a long time ago.
Brocktober was also a long time ago. Shout out to those guys. They
then
Luke
Croman Vember was after that, or Luke Vember.
They got a lot of AI generated characters playing quarterback, man.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, to Florida State's credit, they're trying to make the necessary moves with their coordinator hires. I mean, I really like their defensive coordinator hire, Tony White from Nebraska. Now their offensive coordinator hire is Gus Malzahn. It kind of feels like when Jimbo Fisher hired Tony Petrino at Texas A&M. It's kind of like a desperation move, and it didn't really mess. I'm not really sure if I still believe in it, unless he can find a way to get Cam Newton another year of eligibility at Florida State. I'm not so sure how much I believe in the Malzahn move, but they're trying to fix their offense and their defense in a big way.
Well, they don't really have a choice, do they? They kind of do have to fix it. They went 2-10, but I don't know. I don't know.
You know what? I think we're looking at this all wrong. Okay. Florida State is fighting the same battle that we fought on this channel many a time, where we talked about, hey, the ACC isn't getting enough respect. We're not getting enough respect. Florida State took boycotting the playoffs so seriously that they said, we're going to make it so there's not a chance that anybody thinks we sniffed the playoff this year. And that's how dedicated they are to saying the ACC was done wrong. Norvell and company, I commend you. The sacrifices along the way, I commend you. DJU, who's going forth to learn some enterprise rental car, I commend you for taking all the get your CDL memes for the greater good of the ACC. We appreciate you all. We really do.
But before we all go, okay, I have a thought for you. You mentioned boycotting and actually got my mind thinking here, okay?
Okay.
Let's say that there is a conference champion this week, or not a conference champion. Let's say
there will be. That's a great.
Okay, no, let's say one of the conference. Let's say Boise State or SMU lose.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say one of them lose, right? And they get left out of the college football playoff as a result. That means they get penalized for playing that extra game, right?
Yeah.
If that happens, I have a new theory for you all. Boycott the conference championship game.
Oh.
You ran that by me over the weekend.
If you get penalized for playing in your conference championship game, I'm telling you, committee, don't you dare do it. Don't do it. If you penalize these teams for playing in their conference championship game, then I'm saying you should just boycott them entirely, that there's just no point in playing.
Jackson, what's the highest level you stopped playing sports at?
High school.
Well, did your high school win anything? City championship, state championship?
We won a state championship.
So what the hell are you talking about, Jackson? You can't give up the opportunity to do. I understand what you're saying.
If you're telling me that SMU, who should be a lock to the playoff, but in some weird scenario were to be left out, it would be ridiculous, right? We'd all agree it would be ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would be.
So then what's the point of playing the conference championship game?
But you can't live your life based off the ridiculousness of the committee. We sat here and watched Texas be propped up all year based on what?
I'm just saying.
If we're talking about what it should be, there's nothing there. We're still watching Penn State get propped up based on people believe Penn State Oregon is going to be a close game. Oregon hasn't impressed, but I am guaranteeing, sure as the sun rises on the east and sets on the west, they're about to stump a mud hole in that Penn State team. That is, they're the 300 seed of college football.
That does sound painful.
They look like a phantom until an actual phantom pulls up. That's what's going to happen to that team. But the committee and all of their wisdom do foolishness all the time. If you live your life based on the committee, why would 90% of teams in the ACC even show up? If you're at Boston College and you lose one game, you know you're out. If you're at SMU, we see how people are treating a one-loss SMU. And if it wasn't for multiple SEC teams pissing down their leg at the moment of truth, they wouldn't be in the conversation in a very serious and meaningful way. You cannot live your life, especially when there's an opportunity to put some hardware in your trophy case for like, oh, well, the committee might not like us, so we'll just sit it out and make the committee love us. You're a football player. We are big, angry men doing big, angry things. I wanted to
float that out there if something ridiculous happens, which we all know can happen because this is the college football playoff committee we're talking about here.
But there's so much upside to winning the conference championship game.
Yes, there is.
Then
but
they
if
get a
you're
first-round
telling me,
bye.
Donno, that you can be left out because you didn't play well in your conference championship game, I think that's kind of ridiculous, right? Isn't that the whole point?
Whereas Notre Dame always sits around literally every year.
Notre Dame's the biggest winner.
Championship week.
Notre Dame's the biggest. Notre Dame and Ohio State are the biggest winners. You know why? They don't play.
You're not wrong there.
And maybe Alabama too. Oh, Jackson's frozen and it's great. That's hilarious.
He did his Dalton impression today.
The football gods decided that they'd had enough. They said, cut his mic off. Cut his mic off. Talk about we're not going to compete. Cut the mic.
Jackson, I wouldn't do it, but I hear where you're coming from, right? Like, I couldn't put my money where my mouth is with that, but I'm with you.
I'm about to cut everybody's mic off because we are out of time. Huge thank you and shout out to Jackson Holzer, Locked on Syracuse. Nobody will be boycotting the conference championship games this week. Kenton Gibbs from Locked on Wolfpack, Grayson Boone from Locked on Wolfpack, Isaac Shade from Locked on Tar Heels. I am Alex Donno from Locked on Canes, and we'll see what happens with the committee and everything else. And we'll be back with you guys next week on another episode of The Squad.
Hey, Tar Heels, teach your mans how to squabble.